Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're tracking down the hidden connective tissue behind some of the absolute greatest music of the 20th century. You know, if you look back at the rock landscape of the late 1960s, it's this massive, colorful explosion of psychedelic sound. But beneath all of that noise, there was a quiet, kind of rustic ripple that eventually swelled into a tidal wave, and it completely reshaped the industry forever. To really grasp the sheer magnitude of this shift, consider this. What actually made Eric Clapton quit Cream? And to add a little more to that mystery box, what caused Elton John to write an album entirely about American pioneers? Or the Rolling Stones to just completely drop their psychedelic phase? Well, the answer to every single one of those questions comes back to one single group of musicians.
Okay, let's dive into this because the immediate shockwaves were just staggering. Back in 1968, a collective known simply as The Band released an album that basically jolted the entire industry. Eric Clapton heard it and literally quit Cream. He was just totally exhausted by the expectation of playing these long, incredibly loud, virtuoso guitar solos. Elton John pivoted and created Tumbleweed Connection, an album absolutely packed with harmonica and pedal steel. The Grateful Dead went acoustic for Working Man's Dead, the Beatles decided to strip down their production for Let It Be, and the Rolling Stones recorded the gritty, bluesy Beggar's Banquet. Basically, the band accidentally killed the psychedelic era.
Part 1. Down in the Basement, an intimate origin story.
Now, to understand how they managed to influence all these established megastars, we really have to look at their incredibly humble origins. Because this wasn't some sound cooked up in a corporate boardroom, right? It was born in a basement. In 1965, the group, who were mostly Canadians, plus one kid from Arkansas, was backing Bob Dylan on his really infamous Electric Tour. They were literally facing incredibly angry folk fans every single night. Then, when Dylan had his famous motorcycle crash in 1967, the whole tour just stopped. The musicians retreated out to Woodstock, New York, just to decompress. And by 1968, that retreat culminated in their landmark debut album, Music from Big Pink.
What's really fascinating here is the actual physical space where all this happened, 56 Parnassus Lane. They rented this house with pink siding, which locals unsurprisingly called Big Pink. And they established this incredibly intimate daily routine. Dylan would come over every single afternoon, and down in the basement, they would just casually jam on old country, blues, and folk classics while also writing brand new material together.
Which brings us to Part 2. Anatomy of a Sound. Deconstructing the Magic.
So what exactly were they playing down there? Well, remember, at the time, psychedelic rock was absolutely dominating. It was all about playing loud, using a ton of studio tricks, and these massive, ego-driven virtuoso solos. But the band? They took the exact opposite approach. They brought in acoustic, rustic instruments, they used these rich three-part harmonies, and focused heavily on rural American storytelling. And the most important part? The song itself was the priority, not the ego of the soloist. It was stripped down, it was communal, and it was just totally refreshing to hear.
At the absolute core of this highly organic sound was Levon Helm. I mean, you can just feel the joyous presence radiating from the guy. As the only American in the entire group, Levon was quite literally the heartbeat of their Americana sound. His unique, incredibly soulful drumming set the absolute gold standard for this brand new roots rock genre.
When anyone asked Levon to actually describe his drumming style, he famously said it lived, quote, somewhere in between that Saturday night dance and a street parade. He had this brilliant, almost instinctual habit of playing far behind the beat, and that anchored their music with a really deep, marching, Memphis, New Orleans-infused rhythm that you just couldn't help but feel right in your chest.
And this brilliantly illustrates their whole philosophy. They didn't isolate everyone in separate little studio booths to capture that feeling. No, they set up together in a single room, usually just on a rug, and played live. They fully embraced the audio leakage between the microphones because, to them, it acted as the sonic glue for the tracks. This whole idea of capturing the pure, live energy of musicians in a room together without relying on heavy studio tricks became the literal blueprint for roots rock.
Moving on to Part 3. The Unsung Architect, Garth Hudson.
Now, while Levon definitely provided the heartbeat, Garth Hudson provided the structural genius. He was actually the only member of the group who didn't sing, but let me tell you, he spoke volumes through his total mastery of the organ, piano, accordion, and saxophone. He served as their primary musical arranger, bringing this sort of classical, recital-like precision to their rustic sound. He was also the guy who acted as the tape engineer, literally hitting record in that basement to preserve their history for the rest of us. And on a personal level, he was the peacemaker. He was kind of the Ringo of the group, the guy who managed to get along with everyone during their bitter feuds later on.
Actually, there's a fantastic, really surprising fact about Garth. When he first joined the group, and keep in mind, at the time they were a pretty rough and tumble rockabilly backing band, he was given the official title of music instructor. They actually paid him an extra $10 a week purely to convince his parents to let their classically trained son go out on tour with a bunch of rowdy rock musicians.
So, the crucial point is, we have to talk about part 4, the weight of a legacy.
Because this magical alignment of 5 incredible talents, well, it couldn't last forever. The timeline of the band's conclusion is quite a somber one. It effectively began with their legendary Thanksgiving farewell concert back in 1976, which was famously captured on film by Martin Scorsese as The Last Waltz. Garth, by the way, delivered an absolutely wonderful sax solo on the song It Makes No Difference at that show. But in the decades that followed, we saw the tragic passing of Richard Manuel and Rick Danko, then the loss of Levon Helm, and in 2023, Robbie Robertson. Which brings us to the final step.
Just recently, the world received the incredibly sad news that Garth Hudson passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 87. He was the final surviving original member of this immortal lineup.
The passing of the last member of the band, it really feels like the definitive close of a massive chapter in music history. As one of our sources poignantly quoted from John Donne in their obituary, "Ask not for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee." It really is a heavy loss for anyone who cherishes the true roots of rock and roll.
So we pay our deepest respects. Rest in peace, Garth Hudson. He always preferred to stay in the background, but his brilliant arrangements helped make the band exactly who they were. And while these 5 men are now gone, the timeless, uniquely American music they captured on tape in that pink house in Woodstock, that will truly live forever.
I want to leave you with this final, somewhat provocative thought. The next time you're listening to your favorite playlist, ask yourself, what modern music exists today only because these 5 guys decided to turn down the volume, tune out all that psychedelic noise of 1968, and just play some tunes together in a basement? Keep listening for that Americana Ripple Effect out there. I promise you, it is absolutely everywhere.